nigga. They couldn't handle me in the psych ward. They walk around and they hear me singing a song. And they're like, Vic. Well, that's a kid. They're like, kid, what's wrong? What's wrong? You okay? And I'll just be like, I'm ill. Brah, brah. I'm ill, motherfucker. I'm ill. Brah, brah. That's what I used to do all throughout jail.
That's automatically the enemy. But to go 90 and a pound.
That was my game. So that's why I thought I was like, I was repping Al-Qaeda and singing that, walking around, so ain't nobody in there with me. Every time they start some shit, I'm just like, brah, brah. I only went to the psych ward so I could come out and say that. As soon as they called me mentally ill, that's why I said in Pig Rose, they stand me mentally ill for being illmatic. Because right after I saw that, I came back. There was a little bit of weed left under my bed, just a nug. I don't know how it got there. And I heard about the dude, how jazz music started, which was this dude was in a regular ass marching band. And he just started drumming, just crazy improv and everything, and marched right on out of that shit into the psych ward. And that was the beginning of jazz, when they just started doing improv shit with live instruments. One of my favorite points in literature is, you know, the innovation of jazz music, blues, and the Harlem Renaissance, of course. Richard Wright is one of my favorite writers. And I was in the psych ward, and when I read The Color Purple finally by Alice Walker, that was amazing. That's why I don't know why I talk to so many black people and they say they don't have a culture. But I don't think they listen to jazz. I don't think they listen to blues or know anything about the Harlem Renaissance. Richard Wright, James Baldwin, Zora Neale Hurston, I think Toni Morrison might still qualify. They don't know about Paul Robeson. They don't know about Lena Horne. I used to watch A Different World, and that's where I learned all my shit from. I used to watch that. I used to have a crush on Freddie and Whitley. So my favorite episode of A Different World is when Lena Horne was on there and they were acting all snooty. Like they had that caviar this, and they were really doing it on the background to try to make it look like they had like class and all that. And she got so irritated with people, with the students, just being fake or whatever they thought, and going off of just some weird stereotype they had of her as like a bougie type. She just went off somewhere and she ran into Mr. Gaines downstairs, and he was making he told her, like, she just told him, you know, she was hungry or whatever, and she noticed how he talked. So they started vibing, and he cooked her okra and macaroni and cheese and maybe some straight up soul food. She was down there vibing when the students found her, and that first thing with that Mr. Gaines, and she explained who she was and what she needed. You know, like, I don't get this one. So somebody else, she was talking about where she came from. That was my whole, like, when I got into freshman year undergrad. I started listening to her music. She was an actress and also a singer, a performance artist, but also an actress. And that was, Lena Horne was like my gateway into lot of things, just in literature and culture, and just the legacy of just my people. Once I got away from Detroit, but mind you, while I was in Detroit, this is where I was learning things. We had a generation of teachers who were all about Black liberation. They taught us things in the schools. We learned all about the Harlem Renaissance writers. My teacher, Miss Ray, had me read Black Joy, the whole classroom, Black Joy by Richard Wright. So this was a whole push. That's why the election that I noticed in the election was hard, because this is not good. Black teachers were teaching, where people were trying to go. Southern Carmichael and the Black Panther Party was something for revolutionary suicide. Like, was like feeling so definitely inspired the motif at on the East Side movie. So that was like a real. It's an interesting thing. Now and then I go back and listen to Miles Davis, the book I went to, Robert Johnson. I went through a whole delusion once that I met that Robert Johnson might have been one of my ancestors with my fingers and like Robert Johnson fingers. So they had a rumor that he had sold his soul to the devil to learn guitar. So it was common practice in the, I guess you could say, the Anglo-Saxon, like slave colonies in the Americas. That part of like how they made slaves was in inducing a culture that undermined their own liberation, like within the population. So they would induce like a crab in a barrel mentality. So. It's even in films, like if you saw Boys in the Hood, right? Ricky was the star of the Hood, and really, he wasn't that smart. He was good for athletics, and they gave him a scholarship. He's about to make it. And next thing you know, he get gunned down because of just the regular hood shit. So somehow, like, this is a pattern in a lot of the black cinema and films in the 90s. And that was around the time Detroit was getting hit with the crack epidemic and all over, like most of the inner cities. And this was in the Nixon, the Reagan, Bush, Nixon era of America, where you saw a lot of like rising, like black resistance, militantism. I don't know the actual term, but that's why Detroit got hit, because it was once known as like a stronghold for the black resistance. It was notoriously corrupt, but it was once like the auto industry capital, and it was prided on its industrial strength, what's called the arsenal of democracy even. So there's a long history in Detroit about resistance and labor unions, the Soviet presence, and everything that relates to source material for what you've seen in the performance art from KÓMIX. So that's it. That's why the way I process what happened with me in Detroit all 36 years was not the normal case, because I had 36 years to study these people and the environment around me and just the culture in general. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't get video of. I couldn't, most people didn't have video capability on their phone.
Over there? Bellies are full over here?
And so I didn't get it, all the dances and stuff like that. It was crazy. it was real life, you know. I'm not gonna pretend to be completely innocent, but because there was a time, I think right when I first got up here, where I had like a sleeping disorder, it's just the trauma, and sleepy and nuts. All my cousins, they were like brothers. They lived around the corner from me, and they were getting older, and they didn't used to let me play G.I. Joe with them until we got older and we got into guns to play KÓMIX. They heard about me waking up in the middle of the night, stabbing folks up. And so they went and got me, and they would wake me up knowing I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even call sick or whatever they were doing. Running the streets at night on the east side, and they go and they give me the police and some little gun. And we playing Cobra. And so they get me on. And I just remember like running up in the parking lot and then these kids running like, oh shit, it's Mickey! Oh shit, it's Mickey! And they go and I'm just like, brrrr. One dude said it and I just lit his whole mouth up. And that was like, I saw his jaw that light and everything, and it just splattered in the blood. So that's where the idea of lowering your mouth comes from. When I'm saying by east side, I mean Orient, 3rd World, 6 Banging Crib. That was the life I was living, like back when I was just a little kid growing up. And I was sleepy and that's waking me up in the middle of the night and getting me into shit. I was too wild in school really to even be allowed at most people's houses between me and Sin. I was just violent and Sin was how she was. And so they would have me like, you know, I couldn't go to a lot. Like eventually they stopped letting me go to baby birthday parties and everything. I even, when I once Sin did take me over to a dude's house, like for some section. I was like 5'4", and he showed me his guns, and I took one and pointed it right at her face. And the only reason it didn't blow off was because the safety was on. And so that's when I found out guns had safety. So I looked at him and realized I'm like, oh shit, I fucked up. That's his girl. But I'm still alive, and I haven't heard from him since. But he was one of the dudes, like, in the hood. He was one of the dudes who took you those little helicopters from, what is that, maple tree, oak tree. He just opened them up and wear them, like, stick them on his nose and shit. He took the sausage nose, the sausage that he was making in the morning, and all kinds of shit. And then did the Donald Duck or Daffy Duck voice. I'm Daffy Duck, ask me again and I'll fuck you up. Like, that was really how, so I'm not trying to romanticize it or anything, but that's the clearest picture I can get of what it's like growing up in Detroit in the early years. Later on, we wound up moving out of that area because I was getting into it. I started getting into fights on the block. Again, I have moments where I black out. So again, there's people I don't remember, I don't think I've seen since. But anyway, I have a little song for you guys to close out. Today is gonna be the day that I'm gonna give it back to you. Right now, you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Well, maybe I'm gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you can lick my balls. Backbeat, the right is on the streets, and I got a king to you. Okay. I guess, well, yeah, like that. I guess I'm just too rock and roll for America.